All right, well, why don't we kick things off? So hello, everyone. Welcome to today's program, How to Engage Prospective Students and Drive Enrollment with AI. So excited to have you here, a topic that I'm passionate about. My name is Allie Lippman. I'm our Senior Customer Success Manager here at BrainSell, the Growth Enablement Company. We help educational institutions grow and scale by defining and implementing a digital roadmap against their overall operational and enrollment strategy. I will be your host for today. Also on the line, we have Andrew McCree, who is the VP of Business and Corporate Development at Conversica, and my colleague and Executive Vice President at BrainSell, Kevin Cook. Glad to have you both here.
Great to be here.
Awesome. Glad to be here. Okay, I know we're covering a lot in a short amount of time, so we're going to jump right in and launch things off with a poll. Our poll is, what is your primary role? We've got 50% voted. Definitely excited to see where people are coming from. 75%. Can we get a few more? Still at 75%. Just waiting on a few more people to vote, and then we will share the results. Looks like most people are from enrollments and admissions. We do have a few marketing people here, which is great. We have a lot to talk about on that front today. Awesome, 100%, nice. Yeah, wow. So it's 50-50 between enrollment and admissions and marketing. Well, why don't we dive on in? So I have a question for both you, Kevin and Andrew. You know, today we're focused on talking about how colleges and universities can leverage artificial intelligence. But before we get started, let's hear where you went to school and what was your mascot.
Andrew, you go first.
So I am, to much of the surprise of all my high school classmates, highly overeducated. I have my bachelor's and master's from MIT. So depending who you ask, we're either the engineers or the beavers. And then I got my MBA at UC Berkeley, home of the Bears. Go Bears.
Woohoo.
What about you, Kevin?
Well, I guess I'm kind of like you. I'm overeducated. So we're funding the educational system. So good for you, Andrew. I went to my undergraduate at University of Maryland, studied physics and English, transferred up to Massachusetts, Gordon College, and finished the English in Maryland and the physics in Massachusetts. Went to graduate school for math, but then switched like right away to journalism because I love journalism. So I got my my graduate degree from Boston University in journalism, and went down a different path for a decade and then came back to this one. So Boston University is my, I like BU. I'm a big BU fan.
My mom is a professor at BU, so.
Is she? So she's a terrier. That's great.
There she is. We'll have to compare notes on where we live. Maybe we cross paths along the way.
Yeah. Well, you know, one thing that's really funny is my son went to BU. He had some of the same professors I did.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. Well, cool. You know, I wanted to mention before we move into our second question that you can put your questions in the sidebar at any time during the presentation. We'll make time for them at the end, but I want you to know that if you hear questions as they come up, you can put them in there and we will address them all at the end. So Andrew, I have a question for you. Let's dive right into the discussion. BrainSell works with a lot of colleges and university. It's an industry I love working with personally, and I know, Kevin, you do too. Andrew, what do you see as the biggest obstacle in 2021 for higher education institutes?
Well, I think there's two that are closely intertwined. Certainly the return to campus post-COVID and all of the many, many factors that come with that. That's something on every campus administrator's mind. But in addition to that, we definitely see the trend that accelerated because of COVID with distance learning and promoting alternative programs. We don't see that trend stopping. We see that continuing and continuing to accelerate. And so how do people make those programs known to their prospective students? How do they drive enrollment? How do they, once they enroll, keep them in those programs? And then a lot of the traditional challenges that come with retention and then ultimately alumni relations that come with that. So expanding those distance learning programs, we see not so much as the challenge, but the opportunity that people will keep focusing on in 2021.
Right. Yeah, and at Conversica, which is where you work and the tool that we're going to be talking about today and showing in a little bit more detail, we have a lot of conversations about the ability to augment the workforce with intelligent virtual assistants. What is an intelligent virtual assistant? Is it like a chatbot?
It's way more than a chatbot. So a chatbot sits on your website waiting for you to get a visitor. And when it does, it reacts, it engages you. And then when you leave the website, so what? The engagement's gone. The Conversica AI assistants communicate over email and text as well as chat. So they are proactively initiating engagement with that prospective or current student. So they can reach out to people that maybe downloaded the brochure off your website, or they came to a campus tour, or it's a student that had applied in the past but didn't enroll that you want to try and get to enroll again. Or it could be someone you've accepted, but they haven't enrolled yet, and you need to help take them that last mile to get them enrolled, get their financial aid done, avoid the negative melts that can happen late in the process. So anywhere in there, she can engage, or he, whatever persona you give your assistant, in a two-way conversation back and forth until that student or prospective student is ready to take action, be it click on a link to finish their enrollment, schedule a call with your admissions office or any other resources you make available, whatever that call to action is you want them to take. She does all that work so your staff can do what they do best and most enjoy, which is engaging live students and talking about their great institution, and spend less time doing what they don't enjoy of sending 10 personalized emails trying to get that engagement.
But it's also like a chat bot could be templated, just a hard response. The AI assistant's conversational. It has natural language understanding, that NLP. And so a chatbot's going to respond, to maybe deflect or point somebody to a web page or something like that. But the AI assistant is discussing. There's a little understanding there.
Yeah, every email she crafts is slightly unique. And the more context we have, the more personalized she can be. One of my favorite examples was our first higher ed customer, the LA Film School. And the staff there wasn't sure if the whole team would be on board with it. So when they employed their AI, her name was Jennifer, they said she was working in the other building. And after a month, they came to the staff meeting and asked the team, how's Jennifer doing? And they said, she's amazing. Like, she's been engaging all these prospects. We've got a great pool of candidates. Our numbers are off the charts. When do we get to meet her? And that's when they turned around the computer and said, she's not real. And they're like, wait, but she was sending me these alerts. We were going back and forth. So yeah, people treat her as real. And even if you broadcast that she's an AI, people don't seem to mind because she's helping them with something that they genuinely care about. And if she is helpful, that's really what matters most, more than if they're an AI or not.
That's right. People, students or parents will engage, and we think, or people used to think, that there would be something off-putting by engaging with an AI, but there isn't. People are happy to engage with something that's talking to them. They're getting information. There's value there, and people like that. They don't mind engaging with an AI.
As long as it's helpful.
As long as it's helpful, that's right.
Where a lot of the chat bots fall down, is they're not helpful. They're just annoying and they're in your way. And that's when you like, get rid of the chat bot, I don't want it.
Yeah, how many times have I in a chat typed in, speak to a human, speak to a human?
Great. What's the key word to get to the next available human?
Yeah.
Agent.
Agent. Yeah, I used to do the same thing.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
That's really interesting. So Conversica is really like, it's really like having a member of your team that can kind of take care of the tedious work of reaching out and following up on follow-ups.
Yeah, that's right.
Exactly.
And humans can do meaningful things. Sorry to interrupt. Humans can do things that they like to do.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So we tend to see the first thing she does is help you get 100% coverage of all those applicants. So you can follow up with everyone who's interested, not just who looks like they might be interested. And then the second benefit is your team starts to get more efficient because they can spend time on their most value add tasks. They spend more time talking to students and applicants than chasing. And then the third bucket is staff satisfaction. When you get to do more of what you like, you're happier, you're more productive, you stay in your job longer. And it's contagious to everyone around you. And so we very much view it as augmenting the team, helping the team do more, not necessarily replacing the team.
Yeah, I saw a statistic that stress at work actually shortens your lifespan. So what you're saying is AI assistants save lives.
And they reduce stress. I'm not saying stress leads to hair loss. But
Yes.
All those long hours, Kevin.
Oh boy.
So Kevin, I know you've recently been having discussions with some colleges and universities about AI. What have you been hearing in those conversations, and how would a tool like Conversica help?
I think there are two areas, and Andrew, you touched on recruitment, getting the new students, engaging with the students. So the first thing is the AI can reduce that workload, can make it more effective, efficiency, because like you said, we're coming off of pandemic, and I have 4 kids, one's done with college, one's almost done with college, one's going into college. So I am intimately familiar with all of the shenanigans that go, all the stuff you have to do when you're looking for a school. And you want those responses. The students and the parents want those responses. So the first thing is efficiency. The schools want to be able to engage with the prospective students. But the other one is something that may not crop up as often. That's fundraising. There are a lot of big vertical tools out there, and there's some shifting. I'm not going to name names, but there's some shifting in the applications that the advancement departments are using. So I've actually seen multiple schools contact us about advancement. How are we going to handle the change in the software world in our advancement department? And AI assistants can help with that because they can take on a lot of the development tasks that somebody might, just like, you're trying to make lots of phone calls in a day, instead of calling the people that you may or may not need to call, you can call the ones that are most important or most responsive, or the ones that have the best chance. You can have a lead warmed up, a donor warmed up. So the two areas I'm seeing it in are recruitment, for obvious reasons, but then also advancement, because there's some things going on in the world that are making the advancement departments, the people, the fundraisers, think about how they're handling their big capital campaigns.
Very interesting. Andrew, I know that you mentioned one already, but do you have any specific success stories that come to mind when you think about Conversica and higher ed?
Yeah, one of the ones that I've been most excited about, and I shared my favorite on the LA Film School, was one of our institutions, I can't name their name, they had great success getting students enrolled, but their ultimate graduation rates were relatively low by most industry benchmarks. And so they used us to engage their existing students where they could identify triggers that maybe they were at risk of dropping out. So they hadn't been to their distance learning class in a week, or they had not submitted some of the assignments. And so instead of putting that onus on a teacher or someone else, the AI would autonomously reach out and say, hey, Kevin, I noticed you haven't been to class this week. Would you like to schedule time so we can figure out a way to help you? And sometimes the response was, yes, I was sick, so it was a low risk issue. But they found a lot of cases where there was legitimate issues, and they were able to bring their student services team in to help them work through whatever that situation was. And as a result, they were able to significantly boost their retention and ultimately their graduation rates.
That's a great use case. That really is.
And it's a case where the AI can't solve the problem on its own. We still need the people, but the AI was able to help the people team say, these are the students to go spend your time on. Like, these are the 10 you can influence. Please help them out. They want your help.
And, you know, that is similar to something you alluded to earlier. In the admissions process, there may be a student who's accepted, but he or she hasn't finished the process. They haven't actually declared, they haven't sent in their deposit. And so rather than have people make lots of phone calls to follow up on those, you can have an AI assistant do that prodding. So it's not just for bringing in new voices or new people, it's also for encouraging people that are already in your system, you're already engaged with, to get something done.
And those are always the ones that have the most impact, right? They're already there, they're at the finish line. Let's get them across the finish line. That's a much bigger return than trying to find someone all the way at the top of the funnel to bring them all the way through.
Right, and a human could be so busy that they may not be able to make all those phone calls or send all those emails, and then things fall off. But as far as I know, the AI assistants aren't taking vacation days, they don't take sick days, and they work most every day.
And they don't complain.
They don't complain, yeah, well, you don't either.
But they are the perfect happy tool.
Yeah.
You know, she's polite yet persistent to help through. And sometimes people just need that gentle nudging.
Right.
And it's amazing how often people will apologize and say, Taylor, I'm sorry it took me so long to respond. Thank you, because I really did want to do this. So thank you for helping to remind me.
I've got an example, real life example of people writing long emails to our virtual assistant, our AI assistant. So they engage conversationally, you're right.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah, so we've talked about some of the use cases for Conversica. I love all these stories. I know that we have some people from marketing here, so I'd love to hear some of the marketing applications with a college and higher ed slant for Conversica.
Yeah, so I think that the classic applicant process we've talked about, but it's not just people who've applied or are going through the process on your website. Driving attendance at regional or on-campus events, even driving alumni to alumni events as part of that advancement and fundraising campaigns, and then following up with students after they did their campus tour. All of those different touch points are things where the assistant can help. And a lot of times those are opportunities that we'd like to do, but we just don't have the manpower and the time to get to. And you can automate all that with your assistant to make that successful.
Yeah, outreach is really important. A dear friend of mine is CFO for a school, higher education, and he said that, you know, there are like 12 universities that are not competing, that students compete to go to. The rest are all competing for the students. And so if you're competing for somebody, you need to get your brand out there. Let's face it, an institution of higher learning, higher education is a brand. People have an idea of what that brand means. And so an AI assistant can help you extend that brand, whether, like you said, it's bringing people to webinars, or it's just, or even your AI chat assistant, the conversational engagement online.
And if we're looking at the distance programs, the certificate programs, everything beyond your classic 4-year program, one of the big areas we've seen a rise in is upselling and cross-selling your prior students. Reaching out to the students who've already come through and ask them for referrals to other students, or, hey, you came through and did this class, would you be interested in doing this additional certification or rolling this over into a higher program? So taking those people you already established a relationship with and leveraging them to generate more opportunities.
Yeah, you know, that's another use case that we haven't brought up yet, continuing education. And we are actually working with one very well-known school on our continuing education program. It is big business. I don't mean to sound his big business, a lot of people involved in it, and they provide this continuing education to large corporations. So it's not just somebody like me trying to get a master's degree. It is education for those large corporations so that the employees can do what they need to do. And you're absolutely right. There's a lot of upsell and cross-sell, or just continually reminding that there are more things that people can learn.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I flirt every now and then with the idea of getting my MBA and talk to recruiters, and it's very much a sales process, right? Trying to get new students in, and I think about all the follow-ups and touches you do to even get someone to go through the application process. And what a great application for technology, as well as all of the data that you collect about your students, and being able to create more opportunities on campus for them, both from a services perspective, but also from an upsell perspective, as you mentioned, Andrew.
And cleaning up your database too is important, because the AI assistant understands language, so he or she can say, oh, I've got this number, is this the right phone number? No, here's my new number. So the AI assistant recognizes when there's a change that needs to be made. A chatbot cannot do that.
Yeah, and what I would say, that the most sophisticated customers we have in higher ed who've been using us the longest, what they've started to adapt to is that there's different audiences. And that's not just different audiences of students, it's parents versus students.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we talk about marketing, parents have different concerns than the kids do. It might not just be Allie wants to go back for her MBA. What does her husband have to say about that? How do you market to the entire group of stakeholders? And so, maybe there's an event going on for spouses of MBA applicants. Well, let's invite all of those, broader family members to it, right? Or we're going to have a financial aid session. We're inviting the parents to, right? All of these extra ways you can reach out that you want to. It's just hard to do that much messaging and campaigning and attendance driving with the limited people that we tend to give our higher ed teams.
That's right.
That's great. Yeah. So what trends in colleges should universities be monitoring when it comes to student enrollment and engagement in 2021 and beyond?
That's a great question. I think we'll continue to see fascinating trends about who's looking at classical four-year programs and who's looking at remote distance learning and alternative programs. And I make that distinction between remote on campus and the classic four-year and alternative, because I think there are changes going on because of COVID, but there's also just changes going on in our society. All sorts of debates going on right now about socioeconomic opportunities. And so I think the institutions that can stay on top of that and offer the programs that align well to it are the ones that are going to be able to thrive as we bounce back from COVID.
Yeah, I think it's about channels. How do people, students, parents engage? So, I am in front of my email inbox. I engage through email or phone. I don't think my kids they don't know how to open an inbox on our desktop. It's silly. Come on, Dad. They're all on their phones, so they would chat. They would engage over their mobile device. They may respond to the emails, but I think it's all about that channel. So different constituents have different preferred methods of engagement. So a school that can utilize all those different channels conversationally, and can engage conversationally and intelligently is going to be poised for success.
That's a great point.
Yeah, love that. Well, thank you both. Those are really great points. I want to transition over to Kevin to show us a little bit about how this actually works. So he's going to show us Conversica's AI admissions assistant, which can help.
Let me get that going here. I just have to find all the right buttons here. Oh my goodness. Let's see. Okay. You all should be seeing the Conversica interface. Is that correct?
Yes, I can see that.
Yeah. So this is the Conversica interface. It looks great. It looks really cool. but this isn't really where this isn't the magic. You'll see, I'm going to show you behind the scenes how you can customize a conversation, how you can get your AI assistant engaged. This is Conversica, but what really is meaningful is what it looks like to the consumer, to the student, to the parent. So before I get into the Conversica editor and the Conversica conversations, I want to show everybody what it really looks like in the end. This is an email. This could be my son's email inbox. His name's not Duncan, by the way. Now, Piper is the assistant who's trying to reach out to my son, to Duncan, because he's interested in Captiosis University. You all should Google what Captiosis means. I made that up. There really isn't, as far as I know, a Captiosis University. At least I hope there isn't. But Piper Thompson, is an admissions counselor or an admissions assistant at Captiosis. Piper found out about Noah, or Duncan, because he applied, or he was on the website, or he downloaded a form, or he went to an event. He engaged somehow. Maybe he's on a list from the high school. Maybe Duncan comes from the high school and he indicated that there was some interest in Captiosis. So Piper knows about Duncan, and Piper sends Duncan an email. And you can see it here. Hi, Duncan. Thanks for your interest in Captiosis. My name is Piper Thompson. I'm wondering if you're planning on attending CU's Get Acquainted webinar next week. If you are, we'd love to schedule some time with you to learn about your plans for the fall. And then some information about Captiosis. Would you like to meet with us? Now, it was important to note this is unread. I love my kids, but he's more interested in baseball, and so he didn't read his email. So what'd she do? Piper sent follow-up. Now, I'm going to show you all how this gets configured, but this is the real life here. Duncan, I'm following up my previous email, and there it is down below. So I was wondering if you will be attending CU's Get Acquainted webinar. Would you like to set up a time? Remember, this is all focused towards some goal. Before I go on further, every conversation or skill inside Conversica points towards a goal. That goal could be introducing the student to a human admissions counselor. In this case, it's going to be Sarah. You'll see that a little later on. But the goal could be, if this is a fundraising skill or a fundraising conversation, it could be having somebody in advancement talk to an alum. But every conversation points towards that goal. Every conversation is going to have some sort of question and response, some email outreach like Piper sent to Duncan. I see you're interested. And then Duncan can have lots of different responses. In this case, Duncan didn't do anything. He kind of ignored it. But he could have said, oh, I'm not going to school here. Oh, you got the wrong person. Oh, you mean my brother? Oh, there could have been a lot of different conversations. The AI assistant knows what those responses could be. The AI assistant will read the natural language and categorize that and respond appropriately. Here's another one, a third email, because Duncan didn't respond. I want to check with you one more time to see if you're going to be at CU's Get Acquainted webinar. Now remember things like CU, the Get Acquainted webinar, the name of the school, because all these things are variables that the AI assistant is working into the conversation, is working into the email. Remember what Andrew said earlier? Every email's a little bit different. It starts with a basic template, but then you customize that template. You add your variables. You kind of teach the AI assistant the right way to respond. And so over time, you'll find that the engagements become more and more conversational and more adaptable to what your respondent is saying. So finally, I got ahead of myself. To this, Duncan finally replied, and I am going to, so Duncan said, yeah, I am interested. I'll show you what it looked like in Duncan's sent folder. This is the one, yeah. So Duncan says, Piper, I'm not sure. Can you tell me more? Piper, the AI assistant, reads that email and understands what Duncan was asking. I'm going to go back to the inbox now, and you can see, oops, inbox. Oops, a little mistake there. That was me. I'm Kevin. Hi, Duncan. I appreciate your response. I've included a link. This is Piper telling Duncan a little bit more. I've included a link below to find out more about CU this summer. Sarah. Now, this is the first time that Sarah's involved. Sarah is the human. Sarah's the goal. We're always trying to get Duncan and Sarah to talk, okay? So Sarah would like to help you answer any questions you might have. Would you prefer we use this phone number? Now, this is where the AI assistant can actually enrich the data. Duncan could respond and say, oh, no, that's not my phone number. That's old. I've got a new number. Or Duncan could say, yeah, that's my mom's number, but mine is this. So the response could be, I have a new phone number. But the most important thing here is Sarah is being introduced. Now, I'm going to pull over a different, and you're looking at an online web tool, but as soon as Piper realizes that Duncan is a hot lead, it realizes that there's some real interest here. This isn't the wrong person, you know, we've got a real student who's really interested. Piper sends an email to Sarah, okay? So Piper says, hello, Sarah. I sent an email to Duncan here saying, are you interested? And it turns out that Duncan's interested. So Sarah's being alerted. Sarah's being alerted that Duncan has some interest. Okay, so Piper continues on, and Piper's asking, you know, are you really interested here? Do this. At some point, Piper wants to make sure that Duncan and Sarah actually connect because she's alerted Sarah. She's told Sarah that she should go do something. But Piper wants to close the loop because, you know, humans don't always follow up. Maybe Duncan didn't respond. So Piper's not only going to continue the engagement with Duncan, but also confirm that Duncan and Sarah have connected. You know, eventually, here's the goal. If I look at the sent folder, Piper gets a response from Duncan. Yep, I talked to my parents. We're all going to attend the informational webinar, and that's the right phone number too. By the way, Mom wants to talk to Sarah. So yeah, this is a great engagement. Now, that's what the email thread looks like. Remember, they're always engaging through that email. Now I'm going to show you what that conversation might look like. This is a real live instance that we use here. I'm going into my conversation editor, and Allie, you're going to have to cut me off. I don't want to go too long.
I'm watching the clock. You're still fine.
Okay. So I've got a list called the Prospective Student Webinar. Okay, of course it's inactive. I really don't want to send these out to real students. Funny story. We turned on Conversica by accident last year. We didn't know it was on until she started engaging with people. I didn't want that to happen again. So this is the engagement thread. This is the conversation for Captiosis University. So this is, if you recognize, you remember the original one, and it's got my name in here because it knows that I'm Kevin. But it supplanted Kevin with Duncan, of course. And it says, here's your interest. Thanks for your interest in Captiosis. Now, look at these colors here. These colors are some of the variables that we've established. And it's telling me that I can specify things. The other language, the other things in here, the things that aren't the variables are, you know, that's the natural language processing that's going to get picked up. There's a template to start from. Then Piper is going to, you know, make things a little bit different so it's more conversational. This is the first attempt. Remember, Duncan did not reply, so Piper had a second attempt. Third reply. Oh my goodness, he still didn't reply. So this is the third attempt. This is the one that Duncan replied to. But you can see we've got multiple attempts, okay? And we've also got timing on these. Now I condensed it all so that, you know, you could see it all in one thread, but you can space this out over time to whatever's most appropriate for you. You guys know what works best, the timing, a day, 2 days, 3 days, whatever. You set the messaging and the timing. So this was that initial engagement. After the initial engagement, you're expecting a response. The assistant is going to get some response. There are lots of different responses. The responses can be of some interest. Yeah, can I call you? Here's a follow-up. I appreciate you getting back to me. You did say you needed some information. So that initial response can be lots of things. It could be, I'm not the wrong person, or I'm not the right person, that was my brother. Or, my sister was interested last year, but she ended up doing something different. So this is the second layer in this conversation, where the AI assistant is understanding what the response is and engaging appropriately. So these are the possible responses. You configure each response just like we configure the original attempt. And of course, the respondent, the person getting the email, may not respond to your first email. This is real life, right? So you can have multiple attempts. And again, just like the first stage, different timing on each attempt. Well, ultimately, this works down here. Additional information, when should we contact, what's the best number? Let me expand this and go full screen so you can see an idea of the potential, how really rich this can be. So the initial engagement, the responses, the secondary engagement, the second step here, all of these things hopefully are going to result in a yes, I'm interested. Remember, Duncan said, yeah, I think we are going to, or he said, I am interested, but I need to know more. Tell me more. So send me more information. And that's when Piper sent the link. And then we had success here. Yeah, my mom wants to talk to. Let's get introduced to Sarah. Sarah got that email. Sarah made the connection. And eventually this concludes with happy satisfaction and a new admission. So, this is a brief description of the recruitment conversation, or a recruitment conversation. In this case, it's a webinar, trying to get the students to attend a webinar. But you could also have a skill that is used for advancement. My alma mater, BU, just completed a very large capital campaign. I was part of it. They were reaching out to me. Those outreaches, contacts, could have been Conversica. So you can use this not just to recruit students, not just to promote webinars, but also in your fundraising activities. So, Ali, I don't know if there's any questions or if there's any extra time here. Again, I want to be sensitive to the overall time.
I do have a question from somebody in our audience that I'd love to have an answer to. Josh asked, what would Sarah say if the prospect was wanting to talk to Piper?
Yeah, that's really, really great. In fact, I'm going to come over here. We actually have that. There are answers. Let me go to here are my answers, sorry. So you can provide answers to specific questions. If somebody says this, then do that. So there is one here. Are you a real person or not? And I love it. Where is it? I can't find my person. Here it is, right at the very top, of course. So the lead wants to know whether the assistant is a human or an AI, or can we talk on the phone? Or all these. So these are the kinds of things. Now remember, it doesn't have to be this exact question, because a chat bot can key in on specific questions. But this is natural language. There's natural language processing going on. So Piper understands that, oh, they're asking me if I'm a human or not, or they want to talk to me. And so the response could be something like this. And again, the response isn't cut and dry. The response could be something that's a little bit more conversational. But you can have multiple responses to whatever kinds of questions you think you're going to get. If you want to have, if the customer starts asking about alpaca farming, you can reply appropriately.
The other feature that I really like is being able to answer as the assistant. So you can take over for your virtual assistants as well. If you need to step in on a conversation, you can manually take over.
Let me pull this back in. So one of the things, Duncan says, yeah, I talked to my parents. We're all going to attend the webinar here. This is what Sarah would have gotten. This is addressed to Sarah. Okay. Now, I can jump straight into Conversica and look at the lead profile, or I can reply as the assistant. So this is what you were just saying. I had my own notes. There's also occasionally the ability to interrupt and reply as me or Sarah, Kevin. I can interrupt that conversation, reply as somebody else at the school, but Piper will continue the engagement normally. So you have a lot of flexibility. Humans have a lot of flexibility to get in and change the conversation appropriately.
One of the things I'd ask about is she doesn't know how to go up. So if she doesn't know, she doesn't guess. So she knows 90% plus of the time what to do. But when she doesn't know, she raises her hand for the human team to help. She doesn't make up her answers because she's never seen it before. And so in that regards, her compliance is actually very high. Something we probably wish our human teams did a little bit better at themselves.
Yeah, and you bring up another good point. The one of the questions and answers, one of the in the conversation here, one of the branches could be, oh yeah, you know, I am interested, but I really can't talk until next week, or this isn't a good time. So the AI assistant understands that. You know, it doesn't, in this case, we were trying to push people to a webinar next week, but it could be a different engagement. And the student could say, I'm on vacation until August or whenever. And the assistant understands timing. So in this, if that was the case, Piper might go to sleep for Duncan, might go to sleep until the appropriate time to wake up and say, oh, is your vacation over? Can we continue this conversation? So you bring up a good point, Andrew. She doesn't always just barrel through. There are occasions when she may step back and ask a human to help, or when she may just wait because the student responded that it was time to wait.
Very interesting. Well, I do have a couple other questions. This one is about integration. Is it easy to integrate Conversica with student databases or CRM tools?
Yeah, we integrate with over 50 systems today. CRM systems most commonly, also marketing automation systems like a HubSpot. We also have an API that over 50 customers have integrated to. So if you have a less common system that we haven't already developed an integration for, we have that option available as well. And the last resort is you can kick off the assistant purely through CSV files. It's not our preferred method. A fully integrated solution's better, so that it can all happen autonomously, so less work, but also as we capture additional information, we can push that back into your system of record.
Yeah, and that's an important note.
Yeah, sometimes there's a wait time to get into the queue with IT. So maybe you have Salesforce and the administrator's busy for 3 months, but you don't want to wait to get started. So you could start with CSV files, maybe reaching out to some of those applicants from longer ago to get started, warm up your email domain, iron out your processes until your IT team finally gives you the support that you've been waiting for. You get that integration and you start adding on additional skills as you ramp up. And
you mentioned something really important, Andrew. The CRM integration allows for some autonomy too. So many schools are already using a mainline CRM like Microsoft or Salesforce for higher education, and they've already got processes. The process could be, and this is already where your marketing tool and your website are communicating to your CRM, so the student fills out a form and is pushed into the CRM. And activity in the CRM could put the student in a target list, or in the marketing tool could put student in a target list. And that automatic process puts the student in the AI conversation without human intervention. So you've already got, schools already have some sort of processes that they're managing. The integrations with CRM and marketing that you mentioned, Andrew, allow that process to continue without human intervention and allowing your AIs to engage without human intervention.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I could see how that'd be really, really important depending on how you're collecting data and how you want Conversica to append that data.
Mm-hmm.
This is a question about onboarding. What is it like to get an intelligent virtual assistant onboarded? How much time does it take?
You want me to start, or you want to start, Andrew?
Yeah, I'll give the high level, and then you can go into the few details. Across all of our customers, the typical assistant gets onboarded and starts messaging in 14 to 21 days. So 2 to 3 weeks. Far faster than the typical person you'd hire. And so she's able to be a full-fledged part of the team in that first month. Kevin, you want to elaborate on the couple of steps that are required?
So the setup is really easy. There's Conversica does technical setup. Like any marketing tool, you have to have your DKIM and all your email stuff set up technically. But as far as the messaging goes, it's really simple. You've got a template for each one of your skills, and you're going to create those conversations. So the way we engage is it's really only a few hours of time with one of our specialists, who is usually also a marketer, to help you set up these templates, fill in these fields appropriately, so that you're going to you're going to speak intelligently about your school. There's ongoing work, so you want to get that out there. Like you said, you want to soften up that database. You want to start sending out these emails and seeing how your people are responding to your AI. So you can teach the AI. So there is a process. The initial setup is very, very quick, but you're right, it does take a few weeks to make sure that things are properly tweaked and that the AI learns. I can show you guys real quick how you might learn. I'm gonna see if I can find somebody. I don't want to pick on somebody who is real. Let me go over here.
And while you're doing that, Kevin, I'd highlight typically the longest part of the onboarding process is figuring out what name you want to give the assistant.
Yeah.
Really invested. Do they want a female? Do they want a male? Is it a younger name? Is it an older name? Mm-hmm. Do they want an androgynous name, which tends to get the highest results? So Morgan, Taylor, Alex, Sam, all very popular. Or do you get something that jives with your school's motto and mascot and your own personality there?
So here's an example. Here's an example of the feedback. So you may say, oh, the person responded in this way. The AI didn't get it quite right. It shouldn't have been that. You should have said, oh, no, what they really meant was this. And so what you do is you train that AI algorithm to understand what the natural language meant. And, if you make one little suggestion, one little feedback in the conversation, it doesn't change everything immediately. It's not this huge cascade, but the AI learns a little bit. Oh, that turn of a phrase really meant this. And so as you over the first few weeks of operation, you want to make some adjustments. It's really only a couple of hours a week, but you just be attentive to it. So overall, the setup is not onerous, but you want to pay attention to it over the first few weeks of operation.
Oh, I have one more question, unless anybody else wants to throw some last-minute questions in the question box. What size school is this appropriate for?
So really, any program that's dealing with hundreds to thousands to tens of thousands of applicants, students, or alumni. If you're less than a couple hundred, your volumes may not be so compelling that they're overwhelming you. But once you're dealing with hundreds of applicants, certainly into the thousands and tens and thousands, then we can help you with making sure you're following up with all of those leads in a personalized way with as many attempts as it takes. And then going beyond just those applicants, how do you engage your existing students for retention? How do you reach out to former students to drive those continuous education programs we talked about? all those alumni that you can engage for advancement. And not just the applicants. At what point you want to reach out to the applicants' broader family of stakeholders. So that's kind of the low end. Most of the institutions we're working with are in the thousands to tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, it does. The number of engagements, the number of students or prospective students is important. But I'd also look at the for advancement, for example, not just necessarily the number of people you're trying to reach out to, but also the value of a capital campaign. So these capital campaigns are sometimes measured in billions, yes, with a B. So this is not a trivial thing. And if you're dealing with a capital campaign that's raising billions of dollars, make sure you do it right. One example, school that I talked to had a problem with the definitions of donors, alumni, whatnot, and because of this definition, they couldn't accurately report. So engagement like this not only allows you to clean up your data, you're going to have better sense of who's actually you're engaging with. So your capital campaign can be more productive. So it's not just the number of recipients, it's also, I think, the value of your campaigns.
Yeah, understood. And hold that thought, because I want to talk about our complementary ROI analysis in a couple minutes, but we did get 2 last-minute questions. Thank you guys for throwing these at us. The first one is it multilingual?
Yes, she is. So she is fluent in English and Spanish, and a strong communicator in German, French, Portuguese, and Japanese. And we continue adding conversations in those languages on a regular basis. So she will always start in one language, and then she has the option to switch to that second language. So here in the US, English and Spanish are the 2 most common that we see for higher ed, but she does have the ability to also communicate in French, German, Portuguese, and Spanish.
Is Mandarin on the roadmap?
It is on the roadmap. I don't have dates at my fingertips, though certainly can look into that if there's an immediate pressing opportunity.
Awesome, thank you. And then my final question, maybe, are you able to see all of the communications between a student or prospect within the CRM?
Yeah. So it does depend on the CRM, and if we can push it back into that. So Salesforce, for example, all of the information is right there in your Salesforce. You don't need to leave Salesforce to go to a different portal.
Yeah, you know, one of the problems with these things is there's so much I want to show, but I want to make sure I look at the most important things. Here's the answer to your question. This is an example of an email thread, and so you can see all the history, the question responses, et cetera, et cetera. And this is from a admissions assistant. It's been anonymized, but a real life admissions assistant here. And you can engage with these in these views. So the answer is yes.
And all of that's available on the contact within Salesforce, for example. And we do integrate with other CRMs. I mentioned Salesforce because it is the one we've integrated with the most often.
Yes, and I will say, if you are using a CRM that doesn't have an integration, we are versed in Conversica integrations as well. All right, I'm going to steal back presenter, if you don't mind, Kevin, and wrap this thing up since we only have a few minutes left.
I don't mind, but I don't know what Piper will think.
Well, Piper.
Piper never gets down.
Right, exactly. Piper is going to be pleased with me no matter what. So I want to thank everyone who attended today. So as a follow-up, we are offering complimentary ROI analysis if you're interested in adding this to your admissions, enrollment, marketing teams, whichever functional area of the university you're interested in applications for Conversica. We are happy to jump on and see if it makes sense for you to try. So please reach out to us. Our email address is here. It's grow@brainsell.net. You can also call our phone number. It's 866-356-2654. Find us on the web, find us on Twitter. We're here, and I'm so excited to perhaps get to meet some of you. And thank you, Andrew and Kevin. It was a riveting conversation, and we will talk soon.
Thanks for
Bye,
having us.
everybody.
Bye,
Have a great
everyone.
afternoon.